order at 7:21. Let's call the meeting to order at 7:21 p.m. We're going to start with the salute to the flag. We waiting for the flag, Allison?
Should be sharing. Can you see it?
Yep. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being broadcast through the Zoom meeting platform from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of June 13th, 2022 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it's time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2022-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 6, 2022, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required in the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include the statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Christner Keefe. Cole. Koch.
Yes.
McHugh.
Yes.
Neff.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Administrator Casagran, Chief McGovern, Engineer Capella, and Attorney Cannon are also present.
I want to apologize to anyone that was waiting on the Zoom for us. We ran a little late on the facilities special meeting agenda, which we are going to continue right now. Eli, can you please present on the facilities DPW facility?
Mayor, before we get started, can we do a motion to amend the agenda?
Greg, is now the time to do that?
Well, that's up to the chair and the body, Mayor.
I mean, I'd prefer to discuss anything that wants to be added to the agenda under new business.
We could do that, or I was gonna.
Does that work?
That's fine. We can add it there.
Okay.
That works.
All right.
Thank you.
Eli, can you please present on the DPW facility?
Yes, so thank you, Mayor. What had been discussed at the last meeting was the idea that there may be some significant potential savings by renovating the existing public works building. And because, well, two things. One is that renovating it might be more economical than building a new building. And two, that renovating it would enable, it would avoid triggering all sorts of environmental upgrades and stormwater management things and so on that were significant components of the cost of the site improvements associated with the new building. That is, rather than put in a rain garden and rip out all the pavement and redo it, that if we renovated the existing building, that you would pretty much leave the parking and the yard where it is. You'd replace the fueling station, you'd fix the salt shed, you'd mill and pave the parking lot rather than start from scratch and avoid extending the impervious surface. And so we submitted a proposal to the borough on Friday, which outlined this approach to do a feasibility study to figure out what it would cost to do this instead of building a new building. Now, this a couple of weeks ago, one of my associates stopped by the building, walked through it with the head of Public Works, Rich Cardella, and saw the existing conditions and took lots of pictures. And that quick look at it was the basis for our proposal and for the discussions that she had with our engineering consultants. And so they all have a good sense of what's involved and what the conditions are. We still would need copies of the drawings from the borough to start our work, but we've laid out a plan for doing this study and having a cost estimator as part of our team to put together the estimate of the costs of construction, of renovation of the building and of renovation of the site work. So that's been submitted. And
Thank you, Eli.
if after this study is done, the borough decides they want to proceed this way, then depending on what we find as part of our study, we would give you a proposal to then implement whatever changes in our report you decided you wanted to go ahead with. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Councilwoman Cole?
You're on mute, Tracy.
Thank you, Teresa. I wasn't aware that Eli, you'd been asked to prepare any kind of proposals regarding a study. And also I have not seen that. And I'm of the mind, so having not seen that or not known about the request, I really can't comment on what you just reported. But we do have problems that need to be fixed. I'd like to fix the problems. And I think that that should be done as cost effectively as possible with the least impact to the neighborhood in that area. And I'd like to know exactly what needs to be done. I don't, with all due respect, know that that's an architectural assignment at this time. And that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman McHugh?
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe we should look into perhaps Eli going back to the drawing board, speaking with our new engineer consultants, CME, I think the company is, and seeing if they have any suggestions on this site work. And then combine those suggestions when we meet with Eli. Eli, did I miss, did you say you have, do you have an estimate on some of those changes, what they could potentially be, or you have to do this homework first?
We have to do the homework first. I mean, we know what some of the big ticket items will be. For instance, it needs a new roof. The primary steel structure is salvageable, but some of the secondary roof framing members are in need of replacement. The entire roof deck is in need of replacement. There are various code upgrades that will be triggered by this process. We have to do what's called a rehabilitation code analysis in order to figure out which things will be triggered. They might have to do with accessibility, for instance, energy conservation, and so on. So it isn't something that, in order to give you a complete picture of what's involved and what the cost will be, it really requires a very detailed analysis.
I'm going to hope that you have another answer for me. I've been asking this for a while. Right where your cursor is along, yeah, that street and all that sidewalk work. Do you have an estimate on the cost of that, the mill pave curb sidewalk?
Yeah, the off-site improvements at Public Works, we've estimated as about $300,000.
Okay, so $300,000. So that's basically that addition to the community center. What does that entail besides the work on Maple? What other offsite work? Like, does the bioretention, does that offsite? Like, what is offsite?
Somewhere I have a detailed cost estimate, which I can submit to the committee if that's, and in fact, I believe, Teresa, that Rick sent that to you a month or so ago.
Yes, he actually had sent it combined, and then I asked him for a breakdown. I'd have to actually look for that.
Yeah.
Okay, did he give you, because Teresa, didn't he give you the whole for PD and DPW, the offsite?
Yeah, but I think he's sent a breakdown. But I thought I forwarded, but I'll have to look in my inbox on that one.
All right, I know if you could you try to find that while we're kind of discussing this? And then because I just want to kind of raise that to some of the governing body members who are looking to save some money. It seems like that could be a considerable amount, especially since we're calling out this intersection, mill and pave, that 3rd Street is going to be.
Eli, you sent me that spreadsheet today. Didn't you break out the offsites
Yeah,
for both
if
locations?
you give me, I can share this with the committee. Hold on a second.
Awesome.
Yeah, so to help the committee, I put this together today. These are the big components. Now, so on the police building side, we have the police building itself, the storage building, the site improvements these are on-site improvements and the off-site improvements. And then on the public works side, we have the building itself, the on-site improvements, the off-site improvements. Then Big Hall, this was the original budget. We had the building renovations. And then this was the 350,000 possible addition for the addition to the storage building. And then if you didn't build the storage building, for instance, actually, I'm sorry. Well, it just shows you, if you didn't build the storage building, you'd save this much. If you didn't build the off-site improvements, you'd save this much. So anyway, you can add and subtract, however, whatever combination of things you want here to see what the net effect will be. This was just a sample of things. So these are the major components that we're talking. This plus this are the major components. So if you don't do the offsite improvements at Public Works, you save 300,000, and that's about equal to the amount of the extra for the addition. If you want to save another 100,000, you could avoid the offsite improvements at the police building.
All right, this is very helpful because I've brought this up before, and hopefully we all take a look at this, and it helps with our decision-making process. No further questions on my end, Eli. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McHugh. Councilwoman Koch.
I'm actually not prepared to ask questions because this is the first that I'm seeing it, and I would like some time to understand exactly what is being presented and what I'm looking at. But I do like the idea of renovating the DPW rather than rebuilding it. I'm also in favor of anything that reduces the impact on both the environment and the neighborhood. So I'm hopeful that this is a workable plan.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch. Councilman Rodriguez.
I'll echo what Councilwoman Koch just said. I haven't spent a lot of time focusing on my effort here because it's been mostly focused on the PD and trying to find cost savings there, and also on the accessory building, including storage for the police department and a community space. So I'm not, haven't been as focused on this. Also haven't had any dialogue on it. So I will, I'll reserve any comments until we get further into this project. I do, one thing I will say, I do want to move quickly on this. If we don't plan to replace the building, we need to very quickly remediate the structural issues going on in this space.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hey, Jack. Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Neff.
Thank you. I mean, I think I agree with my my fellow council members that it seems to make sense to renovate the building. I'm hearing Eli saying that that would mean a lot of savings. I am concerned about time frame. I really believe that it's very important that we move forward with the police department construction, if that's what the majority of the council would like to do. Resolve those issues around that multi-purpose room, which I'm assuming will not take that long, and really take care of that, and also make a decision on Fairhaven Road, the purchase of that property on Fairhaven Road. I think the council has a lot on its plate. I believe that, hearing from Eli, it would take a while to figure out what needs to be done here. And maybe we should think about it as a separate workflow, maybe leading into next year. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying we have too much going on. And I think because there's so much, it's taking us a long time and many years to get it done. And if we break it up into pieces that are more digestible, maybe we can move faster. And I'm concerned, like I said, about us not losing momentum if we are going to do the police station, because the financial environment might only get worse. And also, to be honest, with the current supply chain issues, I am concerned about having two massive buildings under construction at the same time in town. I'm unconvinced that that's something we really want to take on. If there turn out to be issues with supply chain, we may have some real headaches for that reason alone, and that's not a financial reason, although it could be financially related. I think it's better to take on one site as a project to start with, and see how it runs. That's just my opinion, but I would welcome other members of the council to comment on this. I do think we should start breaking up some of these decisions into this year versus next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Christner Keefe.
I will echo, this is the first time I'm seeing this, taking a review of it. I think my immediate, it's very hard to see. I can't tell what a lot of is going on here. But I would say my immediate feedback is if there is a significantly more cost-effective way, which I believe this is targeted at, to achieve a marrying of the existing DPW site plan with some of the proposals on the, I don't know, the most recent version of the expensive DPW plan, I'll say. I'm interested in that. I heard Eli loud and clear during our first session about the police department. Any changes are going to cost time and money, time and money, time and money. I think we need to be mindful of that here too. Are we going to be exactly back where we would have been if we said yes to the quote expensive plan now versus holding off? So I think what I'm interested to know before committing to moving forward is, what is that cost savings? Are we talking $100,000? Are we talking $2 million, $3 million? So I think I'm interested in that. Eli, do you have any immediate feedback on that?
Yes, I think that there's a potential between the savings of the building and the site to save more than $1 million. I can't at this point tell you whether it's going to be 1 million or 2 million. It's not going to be 3 or 4, but it might be somewhere between 1 and 2. This is where some significant savings are possible because of the ability to avoid a lot of site improvements that were costly.
My first reaction to that is that I think a $1 million savings is not enough, or not something that makes enough of a change in the project. I mean, it's what, a $7 million project? So saving $1 million it's a significant amount, but for something that would be renovated instead of new, that's fairly disappointing to hear to me. It'll
Just so
make
you
me concerned.
understand.
It may also make me concerned because then we still start talking about a very high cost.
Well, just so you understand, I think everyone needs to understand this, that there are certain parts of the existing building that can be kept, but there's certain parts that have to be replaced completely as if you were going to build a new building. So if we have to put a new roof on it, putting a new roof on this building may cost more than a roof would have cost on a new building, because we not only have to put the new roof on, we have to take the old one off and dispose of it. The same with siding, that if the siding is badly rotted, for instance. Other things like the superstructure probably can stay, and therefore we don't have to buy a new superstructure. But these are the things, this is why we have to do it in detail, so that we can understand which aspects can be kept. For instance, we understand that there's some relatively recent electrical work in the building, which hopefully can be kept, but there are aspects of the HVAC system that are in very poor shape that need to be replaced. So that's why this has to be done system by system. And I didn't say you'd only save $1 million, but if you think you're going to save 3 million, you're not going to save 3 million. You might save $1 million on the building, you might save $1 million on the site. I don't know, you maybe save $500,000 on the site, but it's the combination of the avoidance of certain things and the reuse of certain things that hopefully will have a big impact. But until we go through system by system, we won't know the answer.
I think it's important too that we're mindful of the fact that we've expended funds already, taxpayer dollars already, on the plan that we have in place. Not advocating for it one way or another, just something to keep in mind. Teresa, were you able to locate the proposal for Eli to do the work in this detailed analysis of, what will we spend to know the difference? I mean,
Yes.
we might not want
Actually, I had to look in my trash. I couldn't find it on Friday, but Eli just resent it to me. You want to pull it up, Eli?
Sure.
And I apologize. I went to trash on the other day.
While Eli's doing that, I would like to say that I feel like the governing body really has to give specific direction regarding DPW. And I'm not sure that direction at this time is conduct a detailed analysis of the structure. It may be, I don't know, but I personally am not in favor of having multiple construction projects going on at the same time. I agree with Councilwoman Neff on this. One project with 2 buildings is enough of a can of worms during this time of uncertainty. That doesn't mean we can wait forever on DPW. I think there is some urgency there. I want to acknowledge that. But I'd like to suggest that there might be a more direct route for what might be considered a short-term fix to the building to buy us the time to consider what that analysis for our facilities would look like. And I just think without good direction from the governing body, we're just going to continue to analyze and spend more money, and I am not in favor of that. I think we need to buy ourselves the time to do it, but do it well. So
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment. The when we adjourned the June 1st meeting, I believe we all agreed that we were going to turn our attention to trying to find an alternative to repair this building. And I believe that that's what we're trying to do here, and that's effectively what the facilities committee was charged with. I may be mistaken. Can you shed your opinion on that?
I think repair is correct, to repair what's broken, repair what's fixed.
The direction we were given was to find a way, was to do a study to figure out how we could get 20 more years of useful life out of the building.
Yeah.
And that's what it says right here in our proposal, 20 more years of useful life.
Who set forth this 20 more years of useful life? Where did that come from?
That was,
As I recall the discussion, we talked about, we wanted to considerably cut the cost of this building. The building itself as presented did not have support. The question was asked on cost, how much will we need to lower the price of the building in order to get support? I don't think we had that answer. And I believe Rich gave a pretty detailed analysis of what he thought could be done with the building. And it was my question, how long would these types of renovations last if we did them? And I think the response from either Eli or Rich was 20 years. That's how I recall this.
That's my recollection too.
That was not a directive from the governing body then. That was an outgrowth of the back and forth.
I apologize, I misspoke, not the June 1st meeting, the May 23rd special meeting. I misspoke. I'm sorry about that.
But that's okay. I know what you were saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need 20 years. This is a hard, my suggestion is that we look at, I believe that there's probably some analysis that we need to do facilities holistically. There are going to be questions down the road about Borough Hall, the brush grinding site, DPW facility. I don't know that there's a magic number, whether we're buying ourselves 20 years or we're buying ourselves 7. But what I'm thinking about is getting past the construction of the PD and the building behind it to the south, and making the immediate short-term repairs that would be necessary. That perhaps don't get us 20 years, but it might get us 10 years. And that might be what we need to conduct the analysis more thoroughly. So I don't really know. At this point, we're looking at, Eli, what's your proposal? $23,000?
As you can see, we have 5 different disciplines in this, between the structural, mechanical, site, estimating, and architectural. And this, as I mentioned, this includes all the analysis that we have to do under the code when you renovate a building, a non-residential building in New Jersey.
Have you seen this study done in 2017? It's not a study, it's an analysis of the structure, very much like what you're proposing, I believe. I sort of feel uncomfortable because I haven't had a chance to look at this, and I want to be fair for you having put it together, but there is, have you had the chance to look at it's brief, it would be a quick read for you, Eli, if you've seen it.
I think I saw it when we started 5 or 6 years ago, whatever.
You probably did.
It's also, the building's in 5 years worse shape too now.
True.
Is there something that can be done on a more immediate basis to stop it from raining in the building? I know that it rains inside the building. So can we do a more immediate fix that would deal with that and then push this off so we have more time to think about it?
Well,
Eli, you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I was looking back through some of my files as we were discussing this, and in 2014, the governing body authorized a new roof for the building. And at that time, that existing roof structure was beyond its life expectancy. We actually did design it, but then obviously the topic of the feasibility study, all the other work that would be involved with the building, whether we built new or renovate, started 2015, and then that document 16 came from there. Since then, in the last 8 years, we've been doing Band-Aids on the roof. We've called in various roofers. We've spent money, thousands of dollars at a clip, but it is at a point where any type of rainstorm, we've got multiple leaks. We've got, as Eli mentioned, now the substructure below the roof structure is now getting damaged as a result. So we've worked our magic as much as we can to try to hold it over, for the past 8 years. And at the end of the day, yes, we have employees in the building. I work out of that building. We've got 5-gallon buckets everywhere. We've got sump pumps everywhere. We've got 55-gallon drums collecting water. And the other concern is when we get a heavy snow and a heavy wet snow, and the implications with that loading on that roof. So that's where we are with the roof doing a Band-Aid. And then obviously there's a multitude of other things, like Eli said, that has happened in the last 5 years, but we've been kind of just in this holding pattern because we're not going to throw good money at bad. So.
Thank you, Rich. I do understand that I had a home that had a roof beyond repair. I can understand that.
And there's,
Yeah, as the mayor had mentioned, we did have a meeting, and I kind of tried to outline a quick synopsis and scope of work as I see it fit if we did a renovation. And looking at the building itself, the site, the storage containers on the site, the fuel tanks, the salt storage building, the recycling yard, all the components of that existing site, existing fence lines, the height of the existing fence, things of that nature. So I guess tonight we're trying to say renovation is a possibility. It always was a possibility, but I think at the conclusion of the 16 report, it was discussed at great length over several months. It was more feasible to do a new site. And then there were also community benefits of the new site. The parking lot on 3rd Street that would feed over to the fields and the other activities that happen over there. The off-site improvements that we took a look at tonight. The minor tweaks and changes to make the site fit better into the existing community. The bioswale / retention basin option for stormwater management. The environmental cleanup. The list goes on and on. So
the expanded recycling. I mean,
Yeah.
there was reasons why they at the time decided to go with the new building. Now we can go in a different direction, and that's already been decided apparently. But how the full governing body wants to proceed, we can certainly.
I guess to just summarize, I think renovating is a possibility. But at the end of the day, you're going to be left with the same size site, the same 4 walls of fence, and pretty much everything within the site. The fuel pumps need to be replaced. We just had a major issue today. with dispensing of the fuel. The tanks have structural issues. And once again, this was something that we had allocated funding, or we had put on our 5-year plan years ago, knowing that this type of work needed to be done, but then it was just held continuously because it was these types of various improvements and Band-Aids were going to be incorporated into the overall project for the new building. So I think we could define a scope of work for the renovation. I think we have to make some decisions, though. Storage is a big item at DPW. We know the existing site functions internally. We've got 5 unsightly storage containers. They were always temporary. So those are the types of things that, you know, Eli had sent a couple team members down last week. I kind of briefed them on some of this. Obviously, Eli's team is understands based on our wants and needs from the new building design, but we need to make some hard decisions on what we're going to do with that type of stuff. If we're going to need to incorporate that into the renovation, and where does that go, the storage? Or do we just simply keep those storage containers as they are and paint them? I mean, that's an option. So that's where I'm at with this. Sorry, I have a 5-year-old calling me.
Thank you, Rich.
And, I don't know if this is going to be helpful. Clearly, we have a dilemma on our hands. So we have very limited budget, and we have many facilities in need of attention. And certainly everyone would agree that DPW, I'm not going to say I agree, the DPW needs attention. I'm not ready to commit to a complete renovation. And I certainly appreciate everything that you said, Rich, and I certainly appreciate Eli putting together a proposal. I will read it. I have not had that opportunity, but I will. I have a proposal. Perhaps if we, as a governing body, looked at a budget to understand what, maybe we back into the design solutions we can afford to do in order to move the DPW forward. That said, I'm not really sure we could do the construction at the same time. I think it depends on the scope of what we can afford to do, but perhaps we could back into the actual design and construction we can afford to do by looking at the budget first. By that, I mean, what we can afford. Because I think, honestly, we can't afford to do what was proposed and what was designed. What are the thoughts about that as an approach?
I think
My
it's,
fear, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds very subjective. I mean, I'm not sure what it is that we can afford. I suspect that would be a matter of opinion. So we might, maybe we want to set a target. Maybe that's what you're asking for. But what we can afford, I think, is a matter of opinion.
I mean, from like a finance standpoint, it has to do with,
Yeah, I mean, it's how much do we think we want to have residents bear at this point? That's where I have an issue.
Yeah.
That's where my issue is. I think it's too much.
Me too.
Put it all together, but how much we can afford, I think that becomes a more subjective question, Councilwoman Cole. That's just my reaction to that.
Yeah, my comment was going to be fairly straightforward, which is my fear is that we end up trying to do something in the short term or in the near term, and we end up in the same place we've gotten to now after the last 15 or 20 years of not maintaining it and not investing in our capital resources and our capital structures that we have, our facilities, and we end up paying more in the long run and not get something that's purpose built and appropriate for the town today, not the town 46 years ago when we built that building, which had far less demands on it, far less homes in town. It just was a different structure for a different time.
I think one of the
So-
things that also was always on everyone's mind, and I don't know if Eli knows the exact percentage, but this is a public building and it's way below code. You know, whether it's the HVAC or the ventilation, Rich will tell you if he's in his office, you know, and they're working in the garage, you know, you're breathing in fumes. You know, once you start to upgrade a public building, and Eli, is it tied to percentage of work? Well, I know we've had the discussion before that you have to bring things up to code.
Yeah, no, it used to be tied to the percentage of work. Now it's much more, it depends on the type of work you do. And there are all these different categories. So we have to go through and figure out which category you're in and then follow through with, depending on the categories, which types of work get triggered. So we have to do that. There's a systematic approach to analyzing that.
This is Sonia Trombino. May I ask a question?
Sonia.
So if we are looking at renovating, do we need to still have the extra parking and the rain garden? Would that be
No.
something that could be significant cost savings if we decide not to do those two particular parts?
That's the point, that you won't have to do those things if you stick to the existing building and the existing site plan.
Yeah, I just
Those are-
wasn't sure if even touching the building would require stormwater management and we were still looking to address parking. I'm just thinking that would be a huge cost savings if we took out those two parts of the project.
Which is why I think that you may save more money in cost avoidance at the site level than you're going to save on the building. But you can't save it on the site unless you stick with the existing building. You know what I mean?
Anyone else have any other questions for Eli?
Actually, I have a 2 points I'd like to make. This is Bob Gasparini. The first is I understand everybody's, concern over the expense of the building and wanting to renovate. But maybe a different way of thinking of the renovation cost is how much money is the town willing to spend to essentially throw away when you have to replace the building anyway. So the budget that we're talking about, if you want to spend $1 million to bring the building to a point where it can stay for another 5 to 10 years, that money is gone. You're going to tear the building down at some point. So how much are we willing to spend that's just going to go away eventually? I understand as a tax-paying resident, I mean, the cost is concerning to me, but at the same time, I don't follow the logic. I mean, my home is 115 years old. As soon as I touch something, when I did my renovation, as soon as I open a wall, as soon as I tear the roof off, it's a whole nother expense because there's always something hiding, and my fear is if we create this limited budget of, let's do only X dollars worth of work, you're going to get into it and something's going to go wrong. There's going to be a problem that you can't see until you pull the roof off, until you tear the walls out. That's going to stop the project, or we're going to have to commit more money to it. I don't, it's a 50-year-old building that is used for an industrial purpose. It's beyond its life. I don't know that there's any sense in throwing more money at the building in the condition that it's in. And if you open it up, my fear is that the town's going to have to come back and say, well, it's going to cost us another $1 million because we found a bigger problem. And then to come back again with, well, it's going to cost a little bit more money. And the other issue with the site is the environmental remediation. I mean, it needs to be done at some point in time. So we either just keep adding to it or we take the proper steps to remediate the site, put the proper controls in place, and take care of it once and for all. I mean, you're going to have to face it at some point. So it either grows and we tackle it later when it's going to cost us more money, or we address it now.
Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else have any questions for Eli?
Mayor, I have a question. Has Eli ever considered a Butler building or a prefabricated building?
We've
I know the
discussed
county has
that.
used Butler buildings quite successfully for their DPWs. Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, we had considered that 2.5 or 3 years ago when we started on this project, and we were ultimately directed to make something that was more in keeping with the neighborhood rather than look like an industrial building. We've done public works buildings using Butler buildings, and you save a few dollars on the structure and the cladding, but the outfitting is the same cost as you'd pay in any other sort of building for the partitions and the lighting and the HVAC and the flooring and the ceilings and everything else. So it does, if you were only building a shell, a garage with nothing in it, and you compared that to a garage with nothing in it built some other way, it would save a high percentage. But by the time you put all the other systems in it, the savings are not, as a percentage, are not as big as you'd expect.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Eli before we move on to the next part of
Mayor?
our agenda?
More of a question for us. I mean, it seems we've had lots of questions and discussion. Do we have a clear path forward one way or another?
Yeah, so we've got a normal cadence of facilities meetings. We may, if people want to eliminate the facilities committee and all of the council members and the mayor take it over, which I think is what Councilwoman Cole was saying about the accessory building. Do we want to do that as well with this building? Effectively, we're turning the council into the facilities committee. I don't know if people are, if they have the time, that's why we've done these separate committees, is to try to push that out to volunteers around the community. But if we want to commit all of that time, we spend 2 or 3 hours in addition to the normal council stuff with those committees. I think that's what I was hearing for that one building. I don't know if I'm hearing that for this building or not.
Well, I'll just, I appreciate you bringing that up, Chris. I feel like the PD and the garage / community piece is really nearly there. And by following through with council, I think those small reconfigurations, it sounds like Eli is already beginning to envision and can draw up pretty readily. And I feel like we should simply follow through. With regard to DPW, my sense is the burden is on the governing body at this point to provide direction. And I would strongly oppose reconvening a facilities committee to meet or engage Eli without clear direction from the governing body, which in all fairness, I don't believe we have yet. And that's not fair to the volunteers. It's not fair to our professionals or our taxpayers. So one thought is, if there's agreement around finishing and moving expeditiously on PD and the building behind it to the south, then I would suggest we focus our attention on there, and in the meantime, workshop on DPW to identify some very clear direction. That is my thinking, that it starts there with the governing body, in fairness to everyone involved.
Hey, Teresa, when's our next council meeting?
Our next Borough Council meeting is on the 27th.
2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Time, yeah. I appreciate the comments from everyone. Time is of the essence. There's a hole in the roof there. I think we do need to move expeditiously to give that direction. You know, whether that's coming from facilities or it's coming from the governing body. We need to act on this quickly. The working conditions in that building are not satisfactory for the borough staff, for the DPW staff that's in there. So, you know, I would propose that we move on the agenda here, and offline after this meeting is over. We can figure out next steps, whether that be another special meeting a week from today, or whether we incorporate that as part of our next council meeting. That's my recommendation.
I mean, I wondered if we could take a vote on whether we want to break up the projects such that we can move forward with the police station, if that's what the majority of the council wants. Just like to take, you know, I really feel that we might get bogged down further if we have DPW continuing to be part of the consideration, because it sounds to me like we need to analyze what the savings would be for the project if it's a renovation. And I'm not even clear at the end of the day, if when we see the results of that, if that's what we want to do. So it seems to me like it might be months versus possibly the police building being resolved fairly quickly. I just also want to make sure, you know, just wanted to mention I'm not going to be here on the 27th. So not that I need to be there for these discussions, but I just want to have my view clear that I really believe that we should split these projects.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I was sort of under the understanding based on the last meeting we had that, you know, support was shown for one building and not the other. So I was under the impression that's what we were doing. If my impression was wrong, I apologize. But I would agree. We need, you know, the police department obviously is showing support. We need to move that project forward as quickly as possible so that the supply chain issues, the interest rates, and inflation all don't have negative effects on the cost of the project for the borough of Fairhaven. So
I'll just make one final add. In conjunction with this proposal here at 23,000, you know, if we did end up proceeding with that project, there would then be the separate proposal for the basic services to realize the project. So, you know, I don't know what that cost would be like as well. But again, I think I don't want us to be trying to achieve a new goal and be not far off from where we were with the initial plan. And again, I don't know what that difference is going to look like, but we would be certainly further down the road. I don't know what the time frame would look like if we did proceed with this second mock-up. But I think Eli, I don't forget what the number was, but quoted the rate of inflation. So, you know, assuming this takes months, 6, 9, I don't know, a year longer at this point to get from the feasibility study to the basic services, you know, just something to be mindful of. I'm not a numbers person, but I trust somebody out there has at least a ballpark on where that is going.
okay. Anyone else? We're good. All right. Thank you, Eli, for your time tonight, as well as the entire facilities committee. We appreciate all the time you spent on these projects up to now, and will continue to spend on the projects moving forward, as well as thank you to the governing body for your questions, which I think we're making progress here. It might be slow progress, but it's progress, so that's good. Moving along, We'll go to the workshop session, police department equipment purchase. I don't know, am I turning that over to the chief or to Teresa?
I'll do the lead in, Mayor, and then the
Okay.
chief can fill in the details. I want to make the governing body aware that the chief recently contacted me to discuss the fact that he's looking to buy some equipment that was unanticipated when we did our budget. And it's really related to school safety. Our initial thought was that the chief thought it would be between $20,000 and $25,000 worth of equipment. Unfortunately, it wouldn't qualify as capital because the individual pieces of equipment he wants to buy are not at a price point of $5,000 each. And in order to be capital expenditure, you have to $5,000 in 5 years. And we can't look at the aggregate of 20 and 25. In other words, you can't buy, 25 $1,000 items and call that a capital expenditure. So the chief really feels that this equipment is essential, and he'll speak to the thoughts on that to you. But my proposal to you, and I want to make you aware, in order to fund it through the current fund budget, the chief, what we propose is that the chief will hold off on all expenditures that he can in his budget until such time that we get closer to November, and we can then transfer money into the police budget to offset this expenditure if the governing body is in favor of doing that. We don't have an ability to transfer money until November, our first meeting in November. The other alternative would be to do an emergency appropriation, and you certainly can do that. But if you do an emergency appropriation, you have to raise it in your 2023 budget. And if possible, it makes more sense to me economically and otherwise to fund it through transfers in this budget. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a very tight budget, and we might have transfers in gasoline and electric and other places we didn't anticipate. But I do think we probably will be able to, get through the 2022 budget with the funds that we've allocated and making transfers to cover all lines at this juncture. If that would change, if gasoline, goes to $10 a gallon or something, everybody will be in the same boat, and we'll be looking at, how we're going to fund a big lift up like that. So I'm going to turn it over to the chief now and let him speak to what he's looking to purchase. And then there's no action on your part at this juncture. I just don't want to knowingly approve a purchase order that that I realize eventually we're going to have to transfer into that department without giving you the heads up. Chief?
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you, Teresa, for, like I said, I spoke to Teresa a couple weeks ago, last week, and she was more than helpful and had some suggestions how we could buy this. What happens is you learn from your mistakes and others' mistakes, we'll call it. And then you look and say, what equipment do you have? Some equipment we have, some cars have this equipment, some don't. And we're really just looking to get every car the same and get equipment. I don't want to get too much into exactly what kind of equipment we're going to buy simply because we are in a public setting here. But in our cars, we have different equipment for, we'll call it for active situation, right? And we found that some cars don't have this, and seeing the news and seeing some stuff that happened, we want to make sure every car has this equipment and we're equipped as much as possible if, God forbid, we ever had a situation. So we'd be looking for some new bulletproof shields, some couple new weapons. We already have some, but like again, some cars don't have it. We need a couple of trunk bolts in cars. Some officers have ballistic helmets, some don't. Also, be looking to buy some extra ballistic vests that go over your vest, that more of like what a entry team or SWAT team would be carrying. So I estimate that to be between $20,000 and $25,000. And unfortunately, with the supply chain, it's probably going to take a while to even get this stuff. So that's why I want to try to get this order set as soon as I can.
Councilwoman Cole, any questions?
I did have a question, Mayor. Teresa, would we be able to fund that from surplus?
Not directly, Councilwoman. There is no mechanism to do that in this current year's budget. We can't charge directly to surplus. What you could do if you decide you want to do an emergency appropriation, you could raise it in next year's budget on the thoughts of using an additional $20,000 or $25,000 worth of surplus to offset that emergency appropriation.
But we don't necessarily need to replenish that surplus with the 25,000. There's no, right? We're not required to have a certain amount of surplus.
Well, there's guidelines on what the rating agencies, you are going to go out for bonds for the facilities. We'd like to keep the surplus at a level that is positively affected upon by the rating agencies. If you lose your AA+ credit rating and you're bonding these facilities, it will cost you a good deal extra in interest.
So it'd be worth knowing whether or not that would affect our bond rating, 25,000. But thank you. Oh, and the other question had to do with the capital fund, which is includes some ARP money. Would that be available?
These are not capital purchases, as on the lead, and I explained that this is not. They don't qualify individually at $5,000 for anything the chief wants to buy, and you can't look at the aggregate.
Even if we put that ARP money, because we put it in our capital fund, that disqualifies it from being.
No, it has nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with that these would not be a capital expenditure.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman McHugh, anything?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, as the police commissioner, Chief and I spoke. I want to give him tools that him and his police officers need to do their job. Without getting into too much detail, like the chief said, I think we all understand this equipment is for emergency purposes. And could the chief, could we do this in yearly installments? Absolutely. But the overall purpose is, we have a lot of this equipment kind of spread out through all our various vehicles and basically vehicles. And in an emergency, if something can go wrong, it probably will. So to have the vehicle show up, you're almost Murphy's Law guaranteed to it be the one that doesn't have the equipment in it, right? So the general idea here is just have all the vehicles equipped with the tools that they need. So no matter who gets there first, they will be equipped and have the tools that they need, and they don't have to worry about, oh, it's in this car or that piece is in the other car. Kind of just minimizing all those crucial seconds that would be, absolutely precious in an emergency situation. So yeah, I fully support this. Chief is always forward thinking, taking initiative. I've experienced that with COVID, when other emergency first responders didn't have the proper PPE or running low, Chief was ahead of it. So I kind of saw firsthand how the chief takes initiative, thinks ahead, always thinking about his officers and the residents. And so, I can support this any more fully.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Koch?
I don't have any questions, except to say that I am in favor of this purchase, and if the chief feels he needs this equipment, then I'm behind him 100%.
Thank you.
I'm just going to make a brief statement on this. I am absolutely in favor of this. I think I've told all of you, any security we can use to ensure that our youth come home at the end of the day is something that, we should all be in favor of. And I would also say that I hope that it's money wasted and we never have to use it. Councilman Rodriguez.
Tonight, I am the parrot. I'm going to echo what the mayor just said, and also what Councilwoman Woman Koch just said, fully support it. There's no question about it. We need to be smart about how we grab the funds and allocate them quickly so we can get the equipment that's needed in order to make sure that our kids are safe. This town prides itself on its family environment, its community, its schools, and its police, and this is hitting a trifecta in my mind. So I'm fully behind it.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Neff?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the chief for going through this process and determining what you need. I fully support it. I think there is no price for the safety of our children. And we need to get the proper equipment, whatever it is that you determine that is necessary to ensure that they are safe in our town. So absolutely support it, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Christner Keefe?
I support it 100%. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, I feel like I didn't say that, but Chief, that was me trying to find the money fast for you. So.
And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for being here. And we're going to move on now. If no one has anything else they want on this, we're going to
Thank you,
move
Mayor.
on to public comment on agenda items. Public comment on agenda items.
Mayor, one hand up so far. It's Becky Lamba.
Hi, please state your name and address for the record. Please try and limit your comments to 3 minutes. This is only on agenda items. Thank you.
Becky, you gonna mute yourself?
Hi, my name's Rebecca Lumba, and I'm at 16 Allen Street, Fairhaven, across from the DPW. I had emailed some of the council members before about which might even be obsolete at this point with the change in the
gate.
It sounds like the whole thing might get changed again. I don't know, but the front of my property abuts the entrance to the DPW, and in the previous plans, they had the entrance moving a bit north, and I just wanted to speak out and say I was against that and didn't want it to happen, but it sounds like the plans are on hold a bit.
Yes, I remember your email, Rebecca. I would say that in the immediate right now, I'm not sure it's something you need to worry about until we refocus on how we're going to handle this project moving forward.
Okay. I think that in the beginning, all the neighbors here on Allen Street were very curious and at all of the meetings. But as the plans had changed substantially from one meeting to the next, we kind of bowed out of the process a bit. And at the last meeting, we're a little surprised at the changes. Not surprised, but I just want to make sure that I'm being heard. And my neighbor as well was surprised about the movement of the driveway and had asked me to speak on his behalf tonight because he wasn't around, that it might get moved. But in sitting through the entire meeting tonight, it does sound like things are on hold.
I would say in the immediate, the planned construction at the DPW is on hold for now. So I would say, Rebecca, to keep yourself
I'm going
informed.
to pay attention from here on out. And on the behalf of the DPW, I just want to say that if anybody went in there, I've been their neighbor for longer than almost anybody on the street, abutting them. When I first came here, I had vacant lots on both sides of me. They've been really terrific neighbors, and I have had occasion to go over there and go into that facility. And there's a severe need for that to be redone. It is a shambles, really. I've been in there, I've been to the office. I needed to jump on my car. They've been terrific neighbors, I have to say. And there is a need. Don't forget them in the scheme of everything that needs to be done. There, definitely is a need. And I know that my neighbors and I have been absent on a lot of the meetings that have been taking place, and I couldn't name one person really on the facilities committee. But we're paying attention now, and I hope that something does get done there, even if the plans do get split into two different plans. There's a need over there, and it does need to be met. So I'll get on board. I'll make sure I'm paying attention when some plans are starting to be formed again. But the thought of rehabbing that building, I can't even believe could be done. It looks like a corrugated metal roof with it's a shambles. And if anyone went over there just to take a spin through, I think they could see that if somebody dropped a match, it would go up like a candle. So we hope that something does get done there, and I'm going to make sure that everyone on Allen Street in the process and paying attention from here going in.
Thank you for your time, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Teresa, is there anyone else with their hand up?
Claudia Brady has her hand up.
Hi, Claudia.
Go ahead, Claudia. You can unmute yourself. Claudia?
Here we go. Okay. I was hitting the one at the top. Sorry about that. I apologize. Claudia Brady, Fairhaven Road. And I really want to talk to, and I hope this is the time, the floodplain kind of resolution that you have on your agenda. This is agenda items, right? But
Yes.
First, I would just like to emphasize my feeling. I'm in agreement with Mike 100%. Having the door to the bathrooms on the east side in that long dark alley or whatever you want to call it doesn't seem apropos for the safety of kids, which we've already addressed, and just having things more out in the open and access to the police department. But the floodplain issue, I felt like I had to be a lawyer to really understand and read the whole thing. So I'm just trusting that these are the requirements of the state and that we have done what the state requires, et cetera. So my question is, the town has a master floodplain plan. Do these changes only affect the flood plan as it exists on the town, or does it affect other areas of the town?
Ask your question one more time, Claudia. Does this affect-
Whatever it is, whatever I should call it. Yeah, it has a lot of building requirements, et cetera, in it. So my question is, what area of the town does this pertain to? Is it just what's considered the master flood plan area that's posted on the website, or does it affect other areas of the town?
Rich, do you want to do, I believe it's just the properties that are in, I think it's 32 properties. Is that right?
So just to be clear, the ordinance applies to the entire town.
Right.
But the various requirements of the ordinance depend upon what area of town you are in and how vulnerable you are to flooding. That makes sense.
It does, but there is a flood plan area where the way I understood those things, it shows the areas that are susceptible to flooding. And for instance, some houses don't have to have flood insurance and some do. So I didn't know if the other areas were affected by this. I'm not asking it probably very well. If you're required to have flood insurance, are you the areas affected by this?
Rich, do you know the answer to that?
I don't, Nick handled most of this.
Nick
in
took
our
us through,
office.
Nick did take us through it the last go round, and he pulled the map up and showed us where the various delineations were. And like Greg said, although the ordinance is written for the entire town, sections, depending on where you are building or renovating, would kick in.
I mean, in a nutshell, if you're in a, like, for example, if you're in a flood hazard area,
Right,
or a code that's prone to flooding, you're gonna have to build higher. That's
right.
essentially the effect of the ordinance.
But if you're not in the flood plan area at this point, or you aren't required to have flood insurance, does that mean you're probably not affected by this?
I don't want to guarantee you anything, but you're probably not affected by this.
Okay, and then my just follow up, because I've brought this up. The pocket parks at the end of Grange and Hance, is the engineering for these two parcels projects have to be redone based on these things?
We already
Building-
have, we have DE permits for them already.
So they aren't affected by this?
No, they're not related, no.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Claudia. Teresa, is there anyone else with their hand up?
There is no other hand up at this juncture there. No.
Okay. Moving along. May I have a motion to approve the May 23rd special, regular, and executive session minutes?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the June 1st special meeting minutes?
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, old business, hearing and adoption of ordinances, 2022-05, generic bond ordinance for $215,000. Do I have a motion to open the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
This would be the time in the public to raise your hand if you had a question on the ordinance 2022-05. No hands, sir.
okay, do I have a motion to close the hearing to the public?
Motion.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-05?
Motion.
second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. 2022-06, replacing chapter 22 flood damage prevention with new flood damage prevention regulations. Is there a motion to open the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
This
Teresa,
would be
is
the
there
time
anyone?
in the public to raise your hand if you have a question on 2022-06. No hands, sir.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-06?
Motion.
second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
2022-07, amend salary ordinance number 2022-07 to correct floodplain administrator title. Do I have a motion to open the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Teresa?
This would be the
anyone?
time in the public to raise your hand if you have a question on 2022-07. Ruth Blazer has a question. Go ahead, Ruth. You can unmute yourself.
Does that involve extra pay?
No, it does not, Ruth. It's strictly
Thank
a
you.
title change.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Teresa?
No, sir.
Do I have a motion to close the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Anyone opposed? May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-07?
I'll make a motion,
Second.
Mayor.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Kushner Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes,
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. New business. I have some new business to start with. As you know, we held a moment of silence for the victims of senseless gun violence at our most recent Memorial Day ceremony. The unimaginable killing of kids in school 10 years after Sandy Hook is disheartening, devastating, and unimaginable. From intimate conversations I have had with members of the governing body, I'm aware that a motion will likely be made tonight to introduce a resolution on common sense gun control to the agenda and put it to a vote. I want to start by saying that I admire the passion to address what is a very important national issue. However, in constantly taking feedback from the residents of our borough, they're not interested in national politics making their way into our local governance, nor am I. No matter the topic's weight, my policy in setting the agenda has been to focus on things that are Fairhaven centric or things that we can specifically control. Otherwise, they're just words on a piece of paper that do not provoke meaningful action and will not result in any interventions to the problem at hand. Thoughts and prayers do not stop bullets or mentally unstable people. There are 7 people up on this dais. There are nearly 6,000 residents in Fairhaven. Not a single one of us is unaware of this issue. Not a single one of us does not want the mass murder to stop immediately. But for any impact to be made, actual action must be taken. I don't think a resolution by a governing body that has no authority to govern this issue achieves what we would all want it to achieve. So I'm leading by example the same way I did on car thefts. I'm asking you to reach out to your state and federal legislators on this issue, as I did after Sandy Hook, and as I inconceivably continue to do 10 years later. I'm tired of hearing that it's a gun control issue, or that it's a mental health issue, or that we need more security, or that we need background checks. It's all of those things. Our leaders need to stop the finger pointing and work on all of them concurrently so that every child makes it back on the school bus at the end of the day. So do what you have to do. Email, call, vote, be passionate as a US citizen about whatever you think should be changed to improve this mess. Although the governing body can't make any real change through a resolution, we can accomplish something locally. We can authorize additional security in our schools immediately. I know this is a sensitive issue, but any progress on the issue of security for the youth of Fairhaven, I am in favor of. Whether it's officers in our schools, additional security such as bulletproof bookcases that can be placed in front of classroom doors in the event of an attack, or additional tools for Fairhaven's finest, we have an obligation to do anything we can to protect our kids until our representatives in Washington actually roll up their sleeves and address the problem. In closing, I do respect what you are trying to achieve. I actually think it's the same thing we all want, but I am hardened at making sure to set and carry the precedent of staying out of national issues and not trying to govern things we can't actually govern for show without progress. With that being said, does anyone else have any new business?
As you know, Mayor, I have a motion to amend the agenda. The motion is to amend the agenda to add a resolution recognizing the communities of Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, reaffirming the strict assault weapons laws in the state of New Jersey, and urging Congress to adopt common sense gun safety legislation for all Americans.
I'd like to second that motion.
Is that an all in favor, Allison, or?
Yes, it can be.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm
So if
gonna,
I may, I will, go ahead.
think you want to put a resolution on the agenda?
We
Correct.
I think we just did. Do you want to read the resolution, Councilwoman Chris Keefe?
Yes, that was my intent. Tracy, do you have something to address before I proceed?
I'll just listen.
Okay.
Hear it.
I read the title of the resolution, and just for the benefit of the public, the resolution was circulated to the entirety of the governing body, and I had conversations with many people concerning the language, and we did discuss it, and the hope was for it to be a bipartisan effort. Whereas the Borough of Fairhaven is saddened by the unthinkable and horrific shooting committed at Robb Elementary School on May 24th, resulting in the death of 19 children and 2 teachers, and impacting the entire Uvalde community and beyond forevermore, as well as the other recent mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And whereas those members of the governing body supporting the within resolution call for an end to the senseless violence and demands that access to assault weapons be restricted in communities around our country through improved legislation at all levels of government. And whereas children throughout the nation continue to be victimized by violent crimes involving firearms, whereas children and educators alike must regularly bear the burden of preparedness drills, whereas there have been more than 235 mass shootings nationwide in the first 185 days of 2022, including 27 occurring at schools, emphasizing the extreme need to immediately address access to firearms and delivery of mental health services. Whereas, according to a report from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions, as of 2020, firearms have become the leading cause of death among children under the age of 19. Whereas, over the last 2 decades, more children have died by gun violence than active duty military and on-duty law enforcement officers combined. Whereas, only 7 states and the District of Columbia ban assault weapons. Whereas, a majority of Americans agree that we should ban the sale of assault weapons, as well as high-capacity magazines or clips that can hold 10, 30, 50, or 100 bullets at a time. Whereas, nearly 90% of Americans support requiring all gun buyers to pass a criminal background check, no matter where they purchase the weapon or from whom they buy it. Whereas, the first Friday of June each year is National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas those members of the governing body supporting the within resolution respect the rights of the vast majority of gun owners who are respectful of the tremendous power of these weapons and who are constantly vigilant and responsible in the management and use of firearms. We support the responsible use of firearms with proper training and licensing. We also believe that reasonable compromise is the key to both protecting the rights promised in the Constitution of the United States of America, as well as assuring the public's safety. Thus, gun control regulations must be increased to ensure that all mass shooting events, including Uvalde, Buffalo, and Tulsa, are not repeated. Our community of Fairhaven demands that the strict assault weapons laws of our state be held as the model for the rest of the nation to ensure these types of atrocities never occur in any community going forward. Whereas residents, neighbors, and elected leaders in Fairhaven need to speak up and advocate for reasonable measures from the federal government that limit access to assault weapons and implement processes that prevent violent incidences involving guns. And now therefore be it resolved by those members of the governing body supporting the within resolution in the Borough of Fairhaven in the County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, number 1, extends its condolences to the victims of the recent mass shooting events in Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and victims of all mass shootings this year. 2, urges our national leadership, including all members of Congress, regardless of party affiliation, to identify, approve, and implement common sense gun reform legislation, including access to and ownership of assault weapons and ammunition, background checks for purchases of firearms, waiting periods, accurate reporting of the activities of at-risk individuals, the delivery of mental health services, and resources and support to ensure a safe and secure school climate. And finally, formally request that elected and appointed officials across the country join us in encouraging the U.S. Congress, regardless of party affiliation, to immediately take actionable steps to protect all communities, including the community of Fairhaven, from the senseless carnage that results from the current status of gun access, including access to assault-style weapons. And I would just like to add that I think there are important action items that can go along with this resolution, such as the one we took earlier this evening in addressing the need for additional equipment. I would encourage everyone to reach out to your federal legislators, not just ours here in New Jersey, but across the country. Educate yourself on New Jersey's gun laws and our federal gun laws, as well as what's being proposed. And if anybody needs help contacting your legislators or isn't sure what to do, there's really a lot of great resources out there. So I encourage it. And I thank everyone for their attention. I believe this is an extremely important topic for everyone across the country, especially in our community in Fairhaven, because we care so much about safety and that of our children. And I don't think any of us can stand the idea of it occurring here. And it's something I think about regularly, and I'm sure many other people do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I guess
like to-
I'll go around the dais and have each person comment if they'd like. Does that work?
I co-wrote this with Councilwoman Christopher Keefe. I'd like to make a comment if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
First of all, I want to commend Councilwoman Christopher Keefe for spearheading this. It's an emotional topic. Just as a point of historical context, I joined in council in 2017. Within quick succession, Stoneman Douglas High School and the synagogue in Pittsburgh were both shot up in February of 2018 and October of 2018. Both councils, which were majority Republican at the time, 6-1, and I was being the one Democrat, we all locked arms, and we didn't find this to be a political issue or a partisan issue or a national issue, but more a humanitarian issue that we all agreed needed to be called out. Our community at the time and our community today will not tolerate this. I want to point out the precedent for our council to speak out against these things. And while I respect the mayor and your comments, and I agree with a vast majority of what you said, Josh, I don't agree with 2 points that this is just words on paper. Frankly, this is what our community believes. Secondly, that this is not a national issue, it's a local issue for every one of these communities, including our own, including our neighboring communities. And we've got to put a stop to this. I got an email during the council meeting, actually, and the email came from Sandy Hook Promise. And it said no single reform will end gun violence completely, but the package that has been presented by the Senate today of solutions will get us further than we've ever been before for a safer world for our children. And Christopher, we simply wouldn't be here without supporters like you, and had you not been standing with us to finish our work. I do think these matters work. I think these things matter. I think the paper matters. I think voicing our views matter. I won't stand down on this. I believe that it's critical that we voice these opinions, but also support our police. We support our schools. We do that by providing resources like we did earlier in this meeting. I do support this resolution, and I pray that this never happens in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Neff, anything you'd like to share?
Thank you, Mayor. I could not support this resolution more. I agree with it, Councilman Rodriguez. This is a local issue. This is not a national issue. It could happen in any neighborhood, God forbid. It could be anybody's school. So I think thinking about it as a national issue pushes it far away from us. Whereas in reality, we have to think that this is so random. It could happen anywhere, even here. And we need to do everything, including supporting our police and thinking very seriously about what additional steps we need to do to make our schools safer. I think it's an absolute priority for us to take potentially some concrete steps in that direction to figure out what it is, what else do we need in terms of security for both of our schools. But I couldn't support this more. I think this resolution speaks to, I think, what, my thoughts as well. And we need to think about this as this is not a political issue. This is a national issue. This is a local issue. I also think that assault weapons don't belong for anyone, in my opinion. And as long as they are out there, people who don't have the mental health to handle them might be doing some crazy things that we are watching happening all the time. So I also support very much that part of the resolution, that's something that needs to be tackled here and nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Just I guess my question is, of course it can happen anywhere, and that's exactly what I was just talking about before, and why I want people to reach out to the legislators so it doesn't happen again. The question is, what is the resolution that's been proposed actually going to achieve? This is not the first time, as you mentioned, that we've put forward a resolution, yet you continue to see this mass carnage everywhere nationally. It continues to happen. So I guess I'm asking this question to you is, what are your expectations for this resolution, the actual impact it's going to make so that this gun violence does stop?
I'd say that, I'm not sure, am I on? I'm not, okay, yeah. Any legislation doesn't happen overnight, and it has to come from the grassroots, and it has to come from the people and from the communities and from the local leaders. And this is what we're trying to accomplish here. Making a couple of phone calls without any gravitas, this resolution actually gives us 6,000 voices behind us. This shows strength when it comes to sending this to 100 senators, which I didn't even get a chance to do. I had a conversation with Mayor Halpern about a week ago, maybe a little less than a week ago, about why I wanted to do this. And I want to take this resolution and I want to sign it, and I want to put a letter to it, and I want to send it to 100 senators. It turns out they're making progress. I think there are thousands and thousands and thousands of councils around this country, whether they're townships or boroughs or cities, that are speaking out against this. And whether it's human rights, it's slavery, it's women's rights, it's anybody's rights, it doesn't happen overnight, and they could easily be taken away. It's important that we voice these opinions at this level. I agreed with it when it was Mayor Lucarelli and 5 other council members as Republicans, because I just simply didn't see it. Slaughtering of school children as a national political issue, but rather something that would hit home for all of us. And when I read the resolution, the Pittsburgh resolution, I was in tears, and I know exactly what Meg was just going through a moment ago by reading this. It's a very emotional issue, like you pointed out, Mayor. It's really important that we talk about it. It's important that everybody hears about it, regardless of what your party affiliation, whether you're independent or Republican or Democrat or nothing. It really doesn't matter. We all agree that this needs to change, and this is our way of voicing that on behalf of our entire community.
I understand, and I think we all want the same thing. The fact remains, from my standpoint, letters can be written at any time. These murders have happened weeks ago. We've all had the opportunities to write to our senators. I don't think that this resolution itself is going to have any actual effect on our legislators actually getting to work and rolling up their sleeves and making changes. And I applaud the changes that they made. I think that was yesterday. It's fantastic, but that's just a small step in actually making an impact. I don't think this resolution accomplishes anything. And really what it's going to do is there's going to be a very fine line moving forward now. You know, what happens next week when someone wants to do a resolution on the price of gasoline and that it's too high? You know, when does it stop? When's the moment when we say, well, that's out of our purview and this is in our purview? You know, we could go on for this forever.
We could, but I think you're conflating, you know, free market pressures of gasoline prices with the death of children. And I take exception to that. I think that putting this in the permanent record is important. I've been doing this for 8 years now. If you include my service to the town before I came on council, putting this on the permanent record is important to everybody up here. It may not be important to you, and you don't get to vote on it unless it's a tie. So it really doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter. It does matter to me from a precedent standpoint, Chris. It does, because, you know,
The precedent's there, sir. It's been done. It was done in February of 2018. It was done in October of 2018. So you're now setting new precedent where we shouldn't
That's
talk
correct.
about it. We shouldn't put it
correct.
on the agenda. And you're trying to gag us, and it's unacceptable.
I'm not trying to
And
gag you. We're
did.
putting this up for a
We
vote,
asked-
Chris. We're having
sorry.
a conversation.
No,
We're having
we
a
asked you to
conversation.
put
I'm
it-
not trying to gag you.
You know, you gagged us because we asked you to put it on the agenda a week ago and you kept it off, and it's unacceptable.
I kept
and we
off
had to
the
wait.
Ukrainian resolution
Sorry,
as well,
Excuse
because
me, I'm
it's a
speaking.
national.
Just give me a moment. I let you speak. Let me say what I have to say. You had an opportunity to put it on the agenda, even if you didn't agree with it, but you try to keep it off. It's unacceptable, and I disagree with it. I'm done speaking. You can speak now.
Thank you, Chris,
It's,
for
and by
allowing
the
me
way,
to
it's not the
speak.
first time something is blocked from the agenda.
That's
by the mayor.
correct. I blocked the
It's
Ukrainian
happened more than
resolution as
once.
well.
It happened more than once that despite council's request, it has been blocked from the agenda by the mayor. This
That's
is not
correct.
this is not your resolution. It's the council's job to determine whether or not to vote for it.
And
I'm
they're
just
doing
gonna
so.
jump
But
in.
I do carry the agenda. And when we try and put on national type items like Ukraine that we can't have any actual effect on, it's, once again, this resolution will not have any actual impact on anything.
So
That's
Mayor,
your,
This
that's
is
your
for show.
opinion. That's your opinion.
if I could
That's
respond.
not,
to
not
that.
necessarily
my
the
opinion.
council's opinion.
That's
That's for the
correct.
council to determine through their majority opinion what their opinion is.
And
That's
that's
your,
correct.
that's your
And when
point
you
of view.
and when you brought a motion, we will vote on it.
Right. You should start with not blocking issues that council asks to be on the agenda, because it's the council's job by majority to determine how to govern our town.
Well,
And
if
this
I-
is not the first time you
Well,
have
that's not
blocked something
exactly
from the
true.
agenda.
Renee. The agenda is the mayor's agenda.
So
The
it's on the
council
agenda.
votes on the majority of the agenda.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say it, you know, it's on the agenda and there is a discussion going, and whether it happened because it was printed in Allison's office or through a motion, it is now being discussed. So, and the only thing I wanted to add at this moment is just, I'm thinking about who I represent and what I was elected. I wasn't elected to represent the people of Fairhaven in State House of Trenton or in Congress in DC. I don't even know if I would be elected if I ran for Congress. So that to me is the line of, is it my place? I certainly have a point of view on this, and I firmly agree with everything that you read in the resolution. However, I'm not sure it's my place to represent that at a state level or a national level, because I'm a local official and I'm clear about my job here representing Fairhaven, and we have a lot to do here, and I love my job and I'm proud to do it. I don't know if I'm struggling with that part of it.
So maybe we can think about, I just want to mention, we can think about something different. I think Councilman Rodriguez mentioned how small towns taking action or speaking out can actually influence policy. So in New Jersey, for example, we now have a state plastic bag ban. It's a statewide plastic bag ban. Why did we get to that point? We got to that point because so many towns in New Jersey were taking a ban, were doing their own plastic bag ban, including Fairhaven. We wrote an ordinance and we approved a plastic bag ban in Fairhaven 3 years before the state actually did it. Why did the state do it? Because clearly there was a voice by many towns. And in order to have a playing field for everyone, so that essentially have everybody under the same rules, it was we have today the most restrictive plastic bag ban in the country. So to say that doing a local resolution doesn't count, I will agree with Councilman Rodriguez's point of view that actually 6,000 voices do count. And it's with little actions like this that eventually the bigger action will take, because that's how we get heard. So
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, we don't have any jurisdiction over these things. This is
Are
why.
you suggesting an ordinance on assault weapons for Fairhaven?
No, but I think that this
But you're talking about
ordinance,
two totally separate things. We can't.
they're not separate things, because these things can happen here. So
We
we
can't
have the
effectuate change on
ability,
this through
we
a
don't have to do a
resolution.
resolution on assault weapons, but we can certainly speak to it and speak to where we stand on it and stand up to it.
If I could
That's
just
where we
go back and respond, Mayor, to your question a little bit ago, in my experience here on council, a resolution tends to be a formal expression of some sort of opinion or will or intent from an official body that often addresses something like this, a matter like this. We may or may not have the ability to have a direct impact on it, but we do have the ability to have an indirect impact on it. And as elected local leaders, I think it is our obligation to use our voices, our collective voice as a governing body that works very well together on many things, to say, this is what we stand for. This is what's important to Fairhaven. I don't expect all of our federal legislators to know Fairhaven and inside and out and what us as a community needs. But I do think it's our responsibility to share that, particularly on issues that are of this significance and import. So, for those reasons, I could not let the first council meeting following the events pass. These are things that are happening in grocery stores, hospitals, and schools, places that we go every day. So this is for me, it is an extremely local issue that is being legislated federally in order to impact the change. And that's why it says, whereas, and then says, now therefore be it resolved. And it gives action items. We extend our condolences. We urge our national leaders. We formally request action be taken. And we can share this. So while I appreciate your position, I stand by the resolution, and I appreciate the governing body engaging on this.
I appreciate your passion. I also stand by my position. Me and Councilman McHugh were in with the superintendent weeks before any of these shootings, looking to create actual change on the issue. And I still believe that this resolution does not have any actual impact whatsoever. But that being said, I don't see any reason that we should continue debating this unless someone wants to. Just bring it to the vote.
I would just add that I think Fairhaven residents are interested in us putting our attention into Fairhaven matters. And this is something we don't have. I wish we had jurisdiction over this. Let me just say, because I agree with everything that's in that resolution. I truly do. But it makes people uncomfortable. I mean, I don't know if you guys are getting texts, but this is making
people don't want us talking about national issues. They don't.
Yeah, this is a local issue that supports the conversation you had with Superintendent McNeil.
Yeah, I'd like a few words, but I think the two teachers are the only ones that haven't spoken yet. So Councilwoman Kosh, would you like to say anything?
I just find this all so disturbing. And I see both sides. I see the mayor's side about wanting to keep national politics out of local agendas. but I also see the importance of standing up and saying enough is enough. And even as a small community that we represent of 6,000 people, Councilwoman Neff, you are correct. Small voices come together and can enact big change. And as a former school teacher, I can tell you the schools are all about safety. It's I think that our superintendent McNeil has done an excellent job with his staff in making our schools as safe as possible for our children. The fact that the chief brought up some more equipment that might be necessary for him and his team to do their job, I think that's what our community is about. And I would like to thank Councilwoman Krisner Keefe and Councilman Rodriguez for the time and effort that they put into building the resolution. Thank you.
Councilman McHugh?
Thank you, Mayor. Right, so, Marine veteran, post 9/11 terrorism awareness, teacher for 9 years. This topic's always on my mind. It's always on my mind. Just this past Memorial Day, grandparents came up to me of a student I taught over 5 years ago and said that she remembers instructions I gave her when she was in middle school. She's going to college now, about this type of attacks. Every opportunity I have, I'll use my voice to educate and bring awareness, because every town these incidents happen, people can't believe it happens in their town. And when stuff happens across the country, we bring those national events into our schools and we talk about them with the children because they're scared. I mean, for her to remember what I said years ago, she's going off to college now, I think says something about what's on the minds of these children. Josh, like you said, that being said, I've been working with our police department and our Board of Ed. I appreciate your support, backing me up with our endeavor in trying to, get these two central governing bodies to agree on how we can continue to improve the safety of our children. I applaud the council today for taking the chief's recommendations on action items that we can do right now. I hope that the support of the resolution, that I could take that support from our council to explore more measures to improve safety in our school, because we haven't been united as a council on specific things that we've talked about. And at least if we could be united, then we can go to the board and present a united front. So with that being said, again, every opportunity I have, I use my voice to educate and raise awareness. So I agree with a lot of this, Mayor, that you're saying. It is kind of like thoughts and prayers. And as a teacher who's seen it and seen how children react, it's frustrating to hear that. But I think we can take this as an action item and support to move forward and reflect on what we can do in our own town to make it safer. So with that being said, I fully support that. Thank Councilwoman Krisner Keefe and Council President Rodriguez for bringing this up.
Thank you. Does someone want to make a motion?
I think the motion was already made.
I believe the motion was made to put it on the agenda.
Right, it's going to be number 148 under resolutions.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, do you want to make the motion to?
Yeah. Oh, I thought we were good on the motion, Allison.
You did.
Okay.
You didn't.
We're good.
Second.
You motioned.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Or is it on number 148 on the agenda, on the consent agenda? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, it's been added.
Oh, it's going to consent agenda? Thank you. Okay. All right. With that being said, let's move on to council committee reports, starting in finance with Councilwoman Neff.
Nothing new beyond everything we've talked about today already. The finance committee has not met this past month, but it will be meeting next month. So I'll have more to say at that point.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Could I make a request of finance? May I, sir?
Sure.
From time to time, in my liaison role with commissions and so on, small items come up for discussion that aren't in this budget, but for future budgets. And I'm wondering if the finance committee helps to keep track of those, or is there a way to capture these items? And is that a useful and helpful thing for the finance committee since it's looking ahead?
What kind of items are you referring to?
Well, there was a couple things in the Environmental Commission. The budget is going to be talked about at Shade Tree. There was a brainstorm about movie equipment. There's small items that I'm just wondering from a management process if there's a way to begin to pass them on so that they can be captured and considered as you prepare a budget for the future.
That could be helpful. I mean, this year, we actually made the request to speak with the department head of each department. So that we could actually have, their request for the year, but also hear from them about what's coming up in the next year or two. So we have some idea about what's happening. It might be a good idea to have some of the commissions provide a perspective on a more consolidated basis. They can provide a breakout, but maybe, the big picture will probably matter more about, how much they spend in this year and whether they think they need more next year, or if there's any significant change that we should know about. So perhaps that's, we could have a similar process to have them also provide some view on a more consolidated basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Personnel, Councilwoman Christner Keith.
Thanks. Personnel is very busy right now. We have a lot on executive session for personnel this evening. In addition to that, the borough currently has 3 open positions: a seasonal DPW laborer, a full-time DPW laborer driver, and a full-time tax and finance office assistant. So if anyone knows anyone or is someone who is looking for employment in any of those areas, please check out the borough's website.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Planning and Zoning, Councilwoman Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. Zoning Board, the next meeting, which is scheduled for July 7th, is an in-person meeting. It will not be on Zoom. For the Planning Board, our next meeting is next week, June 21st. And as far as I know, Allison, it's still a Zoom meeting. Is that correct?
Supposed to be Zoom. There's a possibility there may be a cancellation, but Sandy didn't finalize that.
Okay, all right, thank you. And in terms of rec, DJ has asked me to personally thank all the volunteers who helped out with the fishing derby on June 4th. It was a big success. And also our rec camp will begin Monday, June 27th. It is fully staffed and they're very excited about the kids coming back for camp. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch. Police, Fire, and OEM, followed by Engineering and DPW, Councilman McHugh.
Thank you, Mayor. Seems like an eternity ago, but first and foremost, I have to commend our fire department for their heroic actions with that house fire in town. They did an amazing job. We are so blessed to have trained professionals on our volunteer staff, experienced professionals. So I have to commend Chief Morrissey and his whole crew. Thank you to the other towns that came out in support of mutual aid. All our emergency personnel, our first aiders, just shined, and it really helped save 2 of those other structures. And of course, most important thing, everybody made it out safe, which is just amazing. Regarding police, we talked about it earlier. Chief discussed his needs there, and I appreciate everyone's support. With that, that would just, like I said, help alleviate any, confusion, knowing that our professionals provided with the necessary tools that they need. Also, thank you to, of course, our professionals, or DPW for the fireworks, Mayor Halpern, but also our volunteers, the fire department, first aid. Not gonna lie, I was a little nervous about the brush site and the fireworks, but they were right there on site, and once again, keeping us all safe so we can enjoy that time with our families and our neighbors. So I appreciate that. Engineering and DPW, there's a few projects in the queue, but just most immediately, I will call out that tonight will be the last night, hopefully, fingers crossed, weather holds up, of the overnight road closure on River Road until we get, till the county gets their bid out for that mill and pave job. Rich, I just saw you. Are you still here? Yeah, Rich, do you have a date again when the county puts their bids out?
They actually, excuse me, they actually did bid the project. And we have a pre-construction meeting. The county sent out a notice on that. Stavola was the apparent low bidder. So obviously River Road is one of, I think, 17 or 18 other streets within the county of Monmouth that they're going to be paving. So we're yet to get a schedule on where we are, but obviously we need to finish the streetscape that's ongoing, the water main work that you had mentioned, and you know, we're going to talk schedule at that pre-con and continue the dialogue with them.
Great. And when's that? Do you have that pre-construction meeting scheduled already, or is it just kind of still?
It's through the county because it's their project. They sent out a notice. Right. Teresa, do you recall? You're on mute.
I believe it's Monday, June 20th.
Yeah, it's
June
next
20th.
week. Yeah.
Awesome. Our next meeting is the 23rd, I think.
Yes.
So
our next meeting is 27th.
27th.
27th. All right, it's great. So Rich, you and I and Councilwoman Cole will talk, and next meeting, I know a lot of the residents are getting kind of antsy, and understandably so, but we'll have some good news. All right, thank you, Rich. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Borough Facilities, Councilman Rodriguez.
I only need 45 minutes to go over my piece. Kidding aside, I will not brief on facilities. I do think that it's important to acknowledge all the volunteers. Mayor, thank you for leading the charge, and all of the council members, all of the professionals in town who pulled together our first fireworks after Fairhaven Day was put to bed by COVID. And so it was nice to see that the town came together that way. Thank you for the police, the fire department for being involved. As Mike mentioned, Rich, for all your folks that helped organize and clean up. It's a big step for us pulling out of COVID. It's important that we keep our parks clean and ship shape, and our brush facility fire free. So I know that there was a lot of planning that went into that. So from a facilities perspective, it's great to see people using what we've got and taking advantage of it in the way that we did. So just want to commend everybody for that. I'm sure there'll be a lot more for me to say on facilities down the road. We said enough tonight though. So I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, Borough Communications and Community Outreach, Councilwoman Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, let's see, for outreach and communications, we can hopefully after our July meeting, we'll be circulating the org chart that we've been working on for some time. That will go to the council, the mayor, and you guys we can spend 5 minutes on it and take your feedback and comments. We are contemplating an annual calendar of events, which require a little lead time communication, but hopefully we have on the horizon an annual calendar of events for Fairhaven. We have been also taking proposals for the AV hybrid meeting equipment. And I'll just put some words in Allison's mouth right now, and you can round it out if you like, but I would say we don't have a recommendation yet So we'll take steps at the next meeting to potentially bundle those proposals as we have them, and then consider what our next move would be. So more on that to come. I do have a little bit more business. The Environmental Commission is delighted that McCarter Pond funding is on the agenda tonight. There's an Avakian report that's only about 6 pages or so, which does touch on steps that could be to help get us to bid specs. It is not a full bid spec document, but suggestions have been made by the Environmental Commission that we consider building on that Avakian report as it's getting us closer where they have done the preliminary work, and hopefully that's the shortest distance between now and getting us out to bid. If anybody would like a copy of that, I can happy to share it. The Environmental Commission is contemplating, is actually taking steps to, and would like your support to implement a pilot project using StormX netting, which would sit at the outfall at the end of Fairhaven Road. This would be a pilot project in that they want to monitor and understand the waste and garbage that's going to come through the storm drain and to the outfall. It's our last chance to catch it, obviously, but also the Environmental Commission is interested in really inventorying and understanding what that is. And if the StormX pilot project is successful, then they'd want to take steps in the future to consider support for doing it more. And this is one of those items there. It's a $4,200 item. The maintenance and stuff has been explored with Teresa and DPW, and it's kind of in a go position. They're looking for some funding. And that's something to keep in mind in case this comes back up. Right now, they haven't asked me to ask council for funding, but at $4,200, it might be worthwhile. I want to commend the green team moving through EC for having pulled off Love Where You Live Day, followed up immediately with Sustainable Jersey Points, earning bronze at 280, and they're stretching for silver designation by August with the 350 points. They're working on recycling stickers together with the Environmental Commission, and 2 cool outcomes from Love Where You Live Day. There's a recycled art project in the foyer at Borough Hall. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. They put a lot of energy into it and it's really great. It says, "Let the sea be plastic free," and it's made from bottle caps. The kids worked hard on it. And there's a video that was produced where kids and families were interviewed. What do you love about living in Fairhaven? And that's being edited and will be shared borough-wide. So look more for that. The Shade Tree Commission, just a quick backup. The Shade Tree Commission has an important document that's part of the planning and basis for future funding. That plan is called Community Forestry Management Plan. That document was given a grace period, as every municipality in New Jersey was given a grace period during COVID. So technically our plan is still valid until 2024. However, it does need to be updated. And it's important that it stays up to date because it, again, is the basis for future grants that would provide for the ability to conduct a tree inventory. And it's a living tree inventory that people would add to, and we know all the time the state of our street trees and our natural area trees, as well as a street tree planting program. So more on that, except to say there is a grant, and the Fairhaven Shade Tree Commission has been encouraged to apply for this grant. It would be $50,000. And it would allow them to update their community forestry management plan and to advance plans for the tree inventory, which is done by professionals along with help from the community. We meet all of the criteria that would pre-qualify us for this application. There's a 25% match, which is $12,500, which can be met through in-kind types of actions. It doesn't have to be cash. But that can include things like trainings, some of which have already happened, ride along with professionals to learn about how you designate hazard trees or condition of trees, conducting inventories, also education programs. A lot of this stuff the Shade Tree Commission has either done, or the borough has done, or is in the works to be done. And my point is, I'm here tonight to say they could qualify, we could get this money and keep our plans up to date, as well as really advance their hard work on coming up with a tree inventory program. But we need to direct staff to help with this application. It's due, it's July 8th, and it's within reach. So with your consent, I hope you, do you have any questions about that?
I have a quick question, Tracy. Any chance any of that action items can coincide with, do you know of the sustainable Jersey?
Yes, Mike, they do. They do. You could get points. I think that's where you're going, right?
Yep.
Yep.
That's one.
So the invasives ordinance, the tree preservation ordinance, all of these are worth, I don't know how many points, but it does help. But more importantly, at some point, we're going to be faced with updating this community forestry management plan, and it will require a professional to help write that update. So this would help us pay for that, because the Shade Tree Commission doesn't have the funds for it.
The state did provide that the last go round. They provided the funding for the professionals as part of the program.
They always do. They have multiple times over the years.
Like through this grant, or you mean separately?
You just apply to the state for the consultant for the CFP.
Okay.
I haven't seen the grant, Tracy. I don't know what kind of lift it is, how much goes into the grant. I haven't evaluated it to see what the staff requirements would be, or who'd be available to put that together in the next, 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Can we look at it? Christy took a look at it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just thought it would be good if we could. Also know, of course, if it's out of reach, then next year, but we're really out of time. So they've also really encouraged Fairhaven to apply, I think. I don't want to read too much into that, but usually when that happens, they're eager to disperse the funds to eligible candidates, which it sounds like we are.
I have historical shade tree stuff I'll share with you offline.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So I don't want to belabor this. Teresa, could we get together and just sync up on it to see?
Why don't you just send me a copy of it and I'll take a look at it tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cole. Moving on to introduction of ordinances, capital improvement fund, $200,000, McCarter Pond and natural area. Anybody want to discuss that before? Have any questions? No? May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2022-08?
So moved.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Chris O'Keefe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, 2022-09, amend chapter 14 to regulate running bamboo. Does anyone have anything?
Can we just summarize what the changes were from the last meeting? I kind of lost the thread on this and was focusing on other items.
Yeah. Well, Meg, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. So the last time, or maybe a couple meetings ago, I forget now, we were at Bicentennial Hall. We were discussing the ordinance to regulate running bamboo and invasive species. And there was a discussion point on invasive species being a whole separate and distinct issue from running bamboo, although they in function result in the same sort of pesty growth that does not go away without significant effort and money. We ultimately withdrew invasive species out of the ordinance and left the running bamboo. So the running bamboo will be regulated based on the ordinance as amended, and then the invasive species is continuing to be reviewed and refined to determine how best to proceed with that. And I believe Tracy and I had a call today about it. And there's still some progress to make on that front. Is there anything to add, Tracy?
Just that it's very clean right now, prohibiting bamboo, and that that'll give us some time as a community. I know Shade Tree is considering this. There's also an invasives group that's starting to talk about what kind of recommendations they might have for the governing body to consider, and including in future actions that might address additional invasives.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I could just have a clarification, probably from the borough attorney, I'm looking at section 14-11.3 B1, regulation of existing running bamboo. Any running bamboo already in existence on a property, blah, 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 may remain provided it is not permitted in any buffer zone. So if I understand that in conjunction with the balance of the ordinance, unless you already have running bamboo will no longer be permitted.
That is correct, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear on the enforcement piece of it. I don't, there is nobody in the borough qualified to deal with this other than, if you want to, we'll involve your tree expert from CME and you'll have to pay them accordingly.
So let's talk about it at another time.
May I ask a question on behalf of a resident? If they have a neighbor that has the bamboo continuously coming to their yard, the spikes, what do they do? Who do they call?
They're going to call Borough Hall.
Yeah.
And then
And I'm
Borough
going to have
Hall
to
would
send
get
somebody out
CME
there to look at it. And
You'll
then
get
you're gonna-
CME to go there. Okay, but
The
So
ordinance calls for the designation of an enforcement officer by resolution of the governing body. So the enforcement officer, either the code enforcement officer, which I don't believe we have one at this moment, the tree conservation officer, that's anticipating the shade tree ordinance going forward, which will be in the future, or any other borough official as may be designated by resolution of the mayor and council. And so that's how it's written up now to give you guys some flexibility because of that ambiguity as to the enforcement. But you will have to fill in that blank, obviously.
Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2022-09?
So
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keith,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
Cole,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
yes,
Rodriguez.
yes,
Both of these ordinances that were introduced will be listed for hearing and adoption on June 27th.
Thank you. Consent agenda, we're talking about resolutions 2022-135 down to 2022-148. That's the new resolution on gun control. Before we move for a vote, does anyone want to separate any of these resolutions or have any questions on any of these resolutions? No? Okay. With that being said, is there a
I'll make a motion.
Is there a
Motion
second?
to approve.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Krishna Keith,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes,
Thank you. Moving on to department reports, May of 2022. Motion to accept the reports as submitted. The
Motion.
motion.
motion, second,
All in favor?
I,
aye,
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're at the good of the borough portion. Please stand, well, please raise your hand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please observe a time limit of 3 minutes.
could I raise an issue?
Sure.
So as the council is aware, Zoya Hanek had a Scout project, her Eagle Scout project was to plant numerous trees in the Fairhaven Fields area by 3rd Street. I was there as a member of her troop, as an adult member of the troop. And one thing that I was made aware of was that that section of Fairhaven Fields is managed by REC. And if I'm wrong about this, please let me know. But my conversation with Mark Olson was that that section of the fields is not considered to be part of the natural area. So we were having a discussion about the amount of invasives there and the fact that it's not really getting a lot of care. And I mentioned that, you know, we may have funds coming to the natural area. And he mentioned that actually, because it's not part of the natural area, that section of the fields may not benefit from those funds. So I just wanted to ask the council or Councilwoman Keefe, maybe that you know something about that. You know, maybe there might be historical reasons as to why that area is managed by RAC and not part of the natural area, but it seemed being a green area that I suppose we want to preserve. It seemed to me that we should be managing it holistically and should be part of, you know, whatever it is that we're doing in natural area, it should be part of that as well and managed by the same people. So I'm not sure if you disagree, but I wanted to raise that as an issue because it seemed to me that it might be getting less attention than if it was part of the same management as the natural area. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can respond to that on a couple of points. The Natural Area Committee has discussed, for lack of a better term, adopting that area and taking care of it. Clearly, you can see some care is being given in any event, you know, and this is at no fault of anybody or, you know, any department or anything like that. It's just there's a lot of work to be done, and the invasives do exactly that. They exponentially invade, and that area in particular has been hit pretty hard. So that's been an ongoing discussion point. There's also some discussion of a coalition to organize a bit better. And Tracy Cole was leading this initiative to try and ensure there is very good cross collaboration. If you want to go ahead, Councilwoman Cole.
Sure, I can appreciate what both of you are saying. And I'll just say, as with Shade Tree and with the, let me back up. I am not given to understand that the rec committee manages that. So I don't actually understand where that came from. I believe you, but it's my understanding that that area, along with all the other natural areas which are susceptible to invasives, is looked after from like a policy, if you will, or cataloging standpoint by the Environmental Commission. The Shade Tree Commission has some purview over it in that they're trying to simply, you know, identify the trees and also to come up with a maintenance plan that will sustain and rebuild our canopy. And that the natural area has some purview here for obvious reasons. And perhaps REC does too. I think of REC as managing programs in spaces. So but you know, maybe I'm wrong. Does REC have some purview in the area, Teresa?
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's just been managed as needed and not necessarily belong to one group or another. But I do know that there have been discussions in the past that didn't go forward, but certainly were looked at to take some of those areas and turn them into some recreational use, whether it was a dog park or another soccer field or something else. I think from my understanding, the natural area, you know, is to be left pristine, that it'll never be developed. And that's that area is really part of Fairhaven Fields proper. There have been talks about, you know, expanding the trail system, and there's been other, you know, areas there. So whether or not you want to deem it, you know, a place that's never going to be developed or one that may be developed, I think that would have more to do with the decisions you make going forward on who would have input into what actually gets done there.
Well, given that the three entities that I named have some shared jurisdiction, if you want to use that term, or at least interest. Natural area has set forth their request for funding. Their annual report really triggered a lot of this good attention. The Shade Tree Commission and clearly Environmental Commission, that's really the nexus or the what has driven the call for cross collaboration. And so there's some communication now going on about working together to look at a holistic plan that would include probably education and awareness, as well as seeking funding, providing advice, things for the governing body to consider in terms of future invasives that we may want to prohibit. But more on that as it evolves. I'm still collecting thoughts from really Councilwoman Neff and Councilwoman Kristen Keefe. We agree conceptually about this. So I think the area will get some attention as it pertains specifically and especially to invasives.
That's great to hear. I just want to kind of piggyback off of Councilwoman Neff's comments because of the professional who looked over there, and animals, most people can't tell the difference between the natural area and that rec area behind the brush grinding site. And so all the invasives, the berries, everything that's eaten over there, the animals go to the natural area and bring them over. So fully support this holistic approach. There's actually been some concerning reports that there's hemlock in that area, which is highly poisonous, right? Just as Socrates. So, we need to look at it all. Just don't forget about that space, essentially.
Definitely.
And if we have to, I'm sure Rich would be happy to help. He's already went over there and directed his guys to go over there and help clear stuff out. But the weakest link in all this natural area, whether it's the fields or whatever, will spread all around. So I'm happy to see so many people with eyes on it now.
Teresa, anyone else? Their hand up?
I don't see anybody from the public with a hand up at this juncture. If anyone from the public that wants to comment, you can raise your hand now. No, sir. No one's raised their hand.
Okay, with that being said, we're going to move along to executive session. It's going to take place via Google Meets, as you know, but formal action will not be taken.
Mayor, can we request a 5-minute gap between?
Sure. Well, we won't start until everyone's ready to roll. So.
Okay.
Be sure you mute your phone and turn your video off here, guys. I mean, mute your computer, I'm sorry, and turn your video off.